Welcome to the USS ORLECK.
Thank you.
So tell me a little bit about yourself, where you live and when you were on the ship and what you did.
My name is Walter S. Shepard, and on the ship everybody calls me Shep. Live in Houston, Texas, retired. I'll be 83 years old on the 15th of March coming up. I joined the U.S. Navy after I graduated from high school in January 7, 1951. And after going to boot camp, I was then assigned to the USS ORLECK. I was a champion rifle shooter in my outfit. We did it in a sleeting storm at Camp Elliott with an M1 rifle at 300 yards. My score was 172 out of 184, which was a winning score. And after that, I was kind of substituted as a rifleman for different things while in Korea. Came aboard ship 1951, transported General A.W. Brewster. I'll never forget, I was in compartment 4C. And I remember it well because I think everybody in there was sick and you could smell every one of them. But I was 4 decks down. So I got towards the last week, I slept up on topside in the fresh air. I was headed for the ORLECK. Didn't know anything about it, didn't even know what a destroyer was then. And I came aboard ship, went on as a deckhand. The next thing, took the training on ship here as a loader on 5-inch guns. Still got some scars from smashing my fingers up with that 54-pound projectile that went in that 5-inch gun. And then they sent me to Shorefighter Director School in San Diego, but I was an RM3 when I graduated, radio in 3rd class. I saw quite a bit of action in Korea. I did everything from doing watch as a radioman, and I ended up the captain's personal talker when they went to battle stations, found general quarters. We got under fire one time, and I happened to be on watch in the bridge. When they signed the general quarters, he ran up, and I stayed right there with him. He said, "Don't get off the phone, don't get off the phone." So I just stayed with him. And when I got through, he was so impressed with what I had done and how I handled it. The coolness of it. He said, "From now on, when I go to general quarters, I want you right by my side." And so that was my general quarters station from then on. I did some relaying messages to, when I say messages, 4 of us were loaded up on the captain's gig and would go to another ship. We went to this ship, and they had one guy standing guard with a rifle. It wasn't an American ship. I don't know what kind of ship it was, I don't know who they were. He pulled up there and handed the guy a bunch of classified, and I knew it was classified because it had to be decoded later. And he handed this guy this briefcase with all this information in it and just took off back for the ship. And he said, "Call the ship and tell them that we delivered it." And I thought, you don't even know who you delivered it to. He said, "Tell the ship we're on our way back." When I punched the button to transmit, all I could hear was Koreans talking on it. And I said, "Man, I can't." I said, "Look, I can't contact the ship." I said, "They're talking on the channel already." And he said, "Well, stand up and see if standing up get tall." I said, "Why don't you just paint a target on my back?" Because I was getting about hot then. I said, "Why don't you just put a target on my back?" I said, "Why don't you stand up? You're taller than I am." He was a real tall guy. Well, he said, "That's all right, just stay where you are." Jobs like that, doing that. I've seen fire a number of times, and I've seen the ship hit. I've seen some wounded on it. Nothing real serious. Nobody ever got killed on there, but did have some injuries. And if I can ever locate the pictures, I got pictures of when they hit the ship and they knock a hole that big. And, Eisenhower got elected in November of '52. They ceased fire by July. They started letting the servicemen out. And so they told me that I could be discharged, and I said, "I'm ready to go home." They sent me to San Diego, waiting to get a discharge, and I went in, and they said, "Well, since you haven't served 3 years," and I went in on one of those 17-year-old jobs, where my dad signed for me and all, and you had to stay in until your 21st birthday. Well, I had been in the service almost 3 years, and I was only 20 years old. They said, "You're going to have to go into the reserves because you hadn't served 3 years." And I said, no, I'll stay in here till I retire, but I'm not going to go in the reserves. Because we had an old man on this ship. We called him Pop D-Dector. He couldn't even walk up and down those stairs. And he was retired in the reserve, and they called him up. Why, I'll never know. Fine old man. He was literally at the end of the trail, you know. They said, but I'll tell you what you can do. If you'll stay in here long enough to get 3 years in, you don't have to go in the reserve. And I said, that's what I want. And I said, you know, Christmas is coming up. They said, well, you're going to miss Christmas at home. And I said, okay. So they let me out. I had 3 years and 1 day in on January the 8th in 1954. I was in the service from January the 7th, 1951 to January the 8th, 1954. So I said, well, I want to see the ship. Well, when we pulled up, I didn't recognize the ship because it doesn't even look anything like it did when I was on it. Everything in this thing is different. I did all kind of things in the service, and we had a boxing team, and a couple of us fought as a pro, and we didn't even have a license. When we were tied up in San Diego, a guy, his name was Tommy Filiatro. He was from Louisiana. Pretty good little fighter. He was a lightweight, and I fought as a light heavy. He and I fought professionally one time.
Was he on the Orleck?
Oh yeah.
And what was his name?
We had about 4 fighters on the Orleck, and we had a guy named Tommy Filiatro. He was the lightweight. Had a middleweight named Billy Gibbons, a black boy, good friend of mine. He was a good boxer too. And then we had a guy named Birchfield. He was part Blackfoot Indian, and he was a heavyweight. And then they had me, and they had one other guy that they took off the ship to fight. They sent me over to the base, and he said, I thought I was going to have all this good food and good liquor. And he said, I did have the good food. But he said, they fought me every Friday night. He said, I fought every Friday night. And finally, he said, I told him I'm not fighting anymore. But that's who the guys were. I used to box in the back of the fantail. Anytime it wasn't too rough, we'd all get back there and box every day. And sometimes I'd box 12, 14 rounds. I tried to find a place. I knocked a guy out just boxing with him, and he fell over the rail, and I grabbed him, and I thought he was going into the China Sea or something, but he didn't. His name was Lavins. When the ship would dock, the guys on the ship, we'd find a place where they were fighting or where they were. We didn't have we had a couple of fights in San Diego where we fought our boys against another ship. But mostly we'd go to where they were training, or we'd go to YMCA and say, do y'all need a couple of fighters tonight or what? And then we'd box for them. But the ship itself really didn't have a boxing team. We just had some boxers on it that when we box when we go someplace and fight. I can tell you all these little war stories. Never was any of that hand-to-hand. Don't know anything about that, thank God. Always had good food. Had some rough weather, some bad weather. Thought it wasn't going to make it a few times, on this destroyer. It's a good experience. I got some pictures that you'd really like to see. One time we got in a scrape off the coast of Korea, of course. I didn't know we had that much ammunition on this ship. All the brass casings that the powder's in, you should see, I got a picture. You should see the bow of the ship. I was in the #1 turret. And you should see those casings stacked up. You can't believe we could shoot that many times and not have worse luck than we did, Our last one time, we saw a milk cow belonging to some old farmer, I guess, up on the hill, and they said, get him. Said, we're in the hostile North Korean territory, and said, that's providing food for them. Said, let's kill the cow. I bet you we shot up $30,000 worth of shells, and we never did hit the cow. So that's some of our efficiency.
About how many crew members on the ship during Korea?
There were a little over 300. It didn't seem like that many, but when they got them all out there and took a picture of them away, there was more on that ship than you think. I don't believe, they said that the ship would do from 320 to 360, but I think maybe our crew In 51, 52 was a little less than that. We had all kind of guys on that. We had one guy that was a top professional heavyweight fighter. Ronnie Wolf was his name, big guy, heavyweight. We had another guy that tried out for the Olympics as a diver, and he left the ship. He wanted to be a jet pilot, and he even wrote me after he went to flight school, and he became a jet pilot. His name was Klingenpeel. I called him Jet, because he always wanted to fly jets, you know. And we had all kind of guys on that ship, and that really what makes it, you know, is the men that you're with. And because you got some on there you wish you didn't know, but that's in everything. But they were a good bunch of guys, you know. Good bunch of guys. We had our corpsman. He was the chief petty officer. He went crazy at sea. We had to lock him up in a special room up near the pilot house. And we locked him up in there and took care of him. Boy, something else. Can you imagine your corpsman losing his cool? I wonder if he slipped him a few pills that he shouldn't have, you know. He that might have been what got him, I don't know. But he really went off at the dead end. I mean, after I got out of the service, I went to college and I went into business. About 5 years later, I left Houston and went to work Continental Casualty Company at 310 South Michigan Avenue in Chicago. Married a young lady there. Then I went to Detroit to the branch. They had problems. They wanted me to straighten it out. I left them and came down to Houston and went in business for myself. And I don't mind telling you, not bragging, but I did real well. Everybody's happy in the family, I guess.
When did you come back to Houston to live?
In the summer of '63. I've lived most of my life, except being in the service, and in Chicago and Detroit for about 5 years. The rest of my time being in Houston. And I always say, if you can't make it in Houston, you can't make it anywhere. Because it is a booming place, always has been, since I've been alive. Of course, I was born in '33, and that was the worst year of the Depression. You know, most people got out of Depression in '41 after the war broke out, you know, all the shipbuilding and stuff in Houston. But my family, we were a little slow. It was about 1955 before we ever started pulling out. I guess I did all right because I'm healthy and I'm old and I'm happy and I got a good family. Well, it's been a good life.
Well, we appreciate you coming to the ship, and you've got to come back.
Well, I'm glad. I had no idea. Two things. I didn't know this ship was made in Orange. No, I didn't know that. Nobody on the ship knew it, I guess. Nobody ever said it. And I had no idea that it was here in Lake Charles. I had no idea. As a Christmas gift, said we're going to take it to the ship.
Awesome. It's a Christmas gift to us, too. It really is.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you saying that. You're very kind. Thank you.